And I was like making I'm rambling now, aren't I? It's because you've given me the opportunity.
Chop chop.
But I was thinking Hello and welcome to episode 192 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. It's Saturday the 18th of November. I hope you've had a great week and you are well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host Ian Truscott. I'm a 3-time CMO, but I'm not a rock star. And in this weekly podcast, with the help of chums that I've met on my marketing journey, I aim to share the marketing street knowledge that will inspire your inner rock star. Come say hello. You can find links to me and my guests in the show notes at rockstarcmo.com or follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter or Facebook. We are Rockstar CMO. This week, we turn the tables in the Rockstar CMO studio as Jeff Clark asked me about content marketing in a world of AI. And we continue the topic as I join my chum and content marketing guru Robert Rose in our virtual bar where he shares a cocktail and a content marketing thought. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
On to our first segment, the Rockstar CMO studio with Jeff Clark, our resident strategy advisor, former Forrester research director. And this week we do things slightly differently as Jeff asks me the questions as we dive into the topic of content and AI.
Ian, welcome back to the studio. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I think that pause at the beginning is getting longer and longer. I would struggle with that in the edit. Like, Ian, is there a bit that's missing? No? Is he going to say anything else? Yes!
Well,
How are you, Jeff? All right?
I'm fine, and you're a master editor, so I'm sure you can fix whatever I screwed up.
No, you're fine. I think last time our application actually screwed up because there was a delay when we were talking to each other, so I had to edit out all this delay.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. So
the platform kind of built in.
So anyway, we have another episode where we're going to reverse, as I put in the show notes, reverse the turntable, and so you can share some pearls of wisdom. But first, you have to share how the weather is in
that's
jolly
true.
old England.
Yeah, see, that's good. See, you've taken over hosting duties and you've remembered the agenda. Perfect, yes. Today, actually, was quite sunny. It was very nice. Tomorrow, apparently, we're going to get a storm. But yes, it's more autumnal than winter, which is quite mild for November. What about yourself?
Same thing. Sunny, autumnal. We did have a snow that lasted for more than an hour yesterday. So, so winter's coming. But very nice day today. Very bright and sunny. So,
are the leaves still on the trees? Are they down?
For the most part, they are down.
Fall has fallen.
It has fallen. Yep.
All right, mate. Well, let's get on with some stuff about marketing, perhaps.
Yeah. What are you talking about today?
Well, we agreed. To
I know we agreed, but they don't know that.
That's a good point. Well, we're going to talk about 5 content strategies for when robots write the content, because I know AI has been everybody's talking about AI, and we've not really talked about it much on the show, and I thought we'd better tackle it.
It's time to talk about it.
Yeah, and I've been playing with it a lot, as everybody has. I mean, everybody you meet has been playing with AI, right? And it's all over LinkedIn. Robert Rose, who's on the show, wrote a Klingon translator, for example. There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on, and and then if you want to see my experiments with it, I actually created a website called mambypambyland.com where I've just completely auto-generated a marketing blog just to get a sense of, as with all these things, right? Unless you play with them yourself, you don't know what they do. So I've been playing with it. So in my view, I think generative AI is here. And I think with ChatGPT and all the other tools, the argument is no longer whether the robots can write B2B content. And that's our focus, isn't it, Jeff, on B2B content. It's what do we do now that AI can do that writing? I think we as marketers need to think about this as, you know, you read so much stuff about what the AI can't do and it can't write and it can't put personality into things. Sorry, it fucking can. It can do an awful lot of good stuff. And I think you can read some very plausible articles that are written by the machines. And I was like making I'm rambling now, aren't I? It's because you've given me the opportunity.
Chop, chop.
But I was thinking about it like self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Right? I think we will soon let machines take on the boring stuff, like driving us to and from work or some boring journey like that. But writing will start to be something we do for the art. So we'll like driving a convertible on a sunny day, for example, if it's that, or if the task is specifically something the robots can't do. So I can imagine that driving an ambulance might always be human because it needs a level of risk, and a robot is probably going to be risk averse.
Very good.
Like so there's going to be things that we still do around driving, but we'll let the robots do the boring stuff. So that's my thoughts there.
You know, it's funny as you were talking about that. I was reminding myself of the fact that I first heard about artificial intelligence in a substantive way back when I was going to meetings of the Boston Computer Society in the mid 80s, I think. And you know, so early in computing, and of course it was, people would be talking about it, and then it'd be like, yeah, but what can you do? Where's it, you know, when's it going to be real? When's it going to be real? So here we are, you know, 40 years later, and it absolutely is real. You know, so I guess, you know, what we're going to cover today and what I have to ask you is that why don't we just let the machines go so you and I can hang out in the cafe and think about what we want them to write about? What say you?
Thank you. What say you? I think we're almost at that point. You know, so I think in B2B, I think the dull stuff, the hygiene content and all of that, you know, all of that will be automated, like I was saying about the cars. But if you love the craft of writing, then we need to think about how our human selves can be injected into this. But also the thing we were talking about before I pressed record as well was all of our competitors are going to be using these tools, right? It's not going to be enough for you to be first or most or fastest or any of those things or creating more. It's going to be how do you then differentiate the content that you're producing? So, and I think that's where the action is going to be, is how do we inject our love and the craft of marketing and our own personality into what's going to get created.
Awesome. So what are your 5 content strategies for when the robots write the content?
I always think it's funny when I'm on the other side. So number 1, Jeff, is your true brand voice. So I think that basically what this means is that we will move out of the idea that our job is to write content, and we move into spending more time thinking about our content strategy. And the first of that is going to be understanding what we want to say and how we want to say it. So the robots may be great copywriters, but they need a great brief. And that brief is commonly called a prompt, right? So they need to create something that reflects our differentiation. So what is our true brand voice? If we've got a copywriter, whether they're human or whether they're machine, is how do we want them to express us? What is it? What's our brand archetype? And all of those things, right? So I think that our content strategy in that point of view will be the differentiation when all of our competitors are cranking out all of this content also using the same tools.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense because, you know, since, you know, what AI can do is scan the web and other data stores, just like your competitors are doing, to give you some sort of homogenized version of the message you're trying to get across, then you're not going to have a differentiated brand. So
I know. Yeah, absolutely. I know two people who, in their experiments with ChatGPT, decided to ask it to create a marketing services company from scratch, right? And just created all of that bland old content that you see on B2B B2B websites. And it's incredibly good at that. The crap that we produce today is really good at creating that, right? So that's my number one.
So number one is your true understanding your true brand voice. What is number two?
Number two, I think the other strategy is that you're going to need an opinion. I think if you look at what, and my experiment, and it's very obvious, but my experiments with ChatGPT, it's very hard to get it to create an opinion piece. So if you look at the good marketing writing, the Mark Ritsons of this world, what you might read on Marketing Week or any of those things, it's the robots might help us with the writing and the structure and the grammar and all that good stuff, but they can't form an opinion. And I think that's going to be important. That's kind of a bleed off of the true brand voice is what's your opinion in the market and how do you want to express that opinion? And you better fucking have one, because if you don't, it's going to be that bland, blah-de-blah-de-blah that all your competitors are getting ChatGPT to write, right? So I think that, and obviously that position, we've talked about this stuff before, and I've talked about swearing, for example, in your content, is it needs to be consistent and authentic. So it needs to reflect those brand values we just talked about, and it needs to be consistent with what it is the customer's going to meet when they meet your people or they read the rest of your content or they implement your services or your product, is that opinion needs to be held throughout the company.
It's another element that it sounds like you got to develop from whole cloth. Plus, both of these first two, your brand voice and an opinion, it just can't be one marketing writer that comes to a conclusion on that you've got to work internally, and AI is not going to help you get alignment with your across the marketing team and the sales team on the fact that this is your opinion, or this is the opinion of the organization. It can once you've developed those things, do you think that ChatGPT can sort of help you expand on that? Looking for proof points or counter opinions, similar opinions, etc.
Absolutely, because I think I saw this on LinkedIn earlier. Somebody, and I really want to remember their name before I finish this sentence, said that AI is a co-pilot, not autopilot, right? So it can help you in getting stuff done as a co-pilot. It's not going to do it for you. So I think that absolutely, once you know what your opinion is and your true brand voice is, then we can probably educate the machine to express that and find the proof points, as you say, and elaborate on those things. But you've got to have that opinion in the first place, right? Yeah. So, and I think then you shape the bias, don't you, of the prompt that you ask and the way that you get the robot to write the content.
And once the plane's going down, then the co-pilot can help write the. Let's pull it back up. While we're looking for another opinion.
I shouldn't have had the fish. I don't know. I'm going to airplane references now.
So number one, you understand your true brand voice. Number two, have an opinion. And what is number three?
This is where I think that, and I kind of expressed this earlier when we were chatting about this is about the fact that the computers can't have a human relationship, right? So the first part of that is we as B2B marketers have insight into our buyer persona's problems, right? And that needs to be expressed. So, and I don't think this is anything to do with AI necessarily. It's a lot of B2B content right now is boring or crap not because it's written by a robot. It's dull because the author hasn't grasped a topic that will emotionally fire up the reader. And what is it the reader cares about? What is it that somebody coming to your website cares about? They care about themselves. They care about their problems and their needs. And every fucking content marketer ever has said those same words. And so I think that that's the thing that you can bring when you're using ChatGPT or something like that and you're auto-generating content is you have that insight. You know what to ask. You know what the problem is that's trying to be solved. And so therefore you need to make sure that you completely understand your customer's needs and have that articulated and documented somewhere so that you can keep going back to that.
Yeah, this is a great point. And we talk about buyer needs all the time for various other perspectives of building campaigns and so I think this is it becomes hard to know how to articulate your buyer's needs. So that's something you have to know, and then maybe you can teach the robot to do that. But you've got to be able to do it first. So our first three. So is know your true brand voice, have an opinion, gain insight into your buyer's problems. What is number 4?
Well, I just want to finish something on number 3 there from your perspective, because I think that the ChatGPT and the AI can help with that, right? Because you may have that insight into the buyer's problems, but also there's a ton of research that's already gone into what it is a CMO needs or a CEO needs or CRM is or all that kind. So I think that AI can help you do the research. Exactly that co-pilot kind of help bit can go with that. Anyway, number 4,
which actually leads us into number 4.
Exactly. It's almost like we planned it. Number 4 is original research. So I think this is where we need to. Where if we look at the operational efficiency you might gain, and I hate to say those words because obviously people write content, and if we're now going to turn to ChatGPT to write content, there's so much of talk about, that there's going to be less work for copywriters to do and stuff like that. But if you're a marketer, this is the time you need to start shifting to the thing that we tend to ignore, and that is original research. So this is to channel your inner research and analyst. So when you use things like auto-generated content and ChatGPT and things like that, they're very hard. It's very difficult to get content attribution, exact stats and quotes and proof and where this content came from and all that stuff. You have that, right? You know your customers, you have, or you know your audience. And so you've got this opportunity to do original research that can feed then into, because it's brand new content. ChatGPT can't do research. Yeah. You can do research. And I think increasingly that will be the differentiation when we're looking for content and we're looking to engage and we're looking to understand our problem better, right? The content that's going to stand out is going to be the content that refers to research and refers to actual things that people have done, I think.
Yeah. And of course, the key here is original, because I think we've all been part of projects of developing research to create marketing collateral pieces, thought leadership pieces, etc. But it is, to anyone who reads the material, it's like you can tell when somebody has really put thought into it and understands. Yeah. Going back to all the previous things you have, the opinion, understanding what the buyer needs really are all about, and understanding how your brand wants to speak to those buyer needs. That's what makes it original.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing I've seen in B2B writing is so many times, and this is again nothing to do with generative AI. Is that we'll say things, or you'll read something and it'll make a claim, and that claim is unsubstantiated, right? It's 30% of blah, blah, blah happens, or 85% of the B2B buyers are this, that, and the other thing. And they don't do the attribution. And quite often, when you do the research and you try and find where some of these quotes come from, you fall down an absolute rabbit hole of things referring to things, and then there's never any actual substance that comes out at the end of it. So I think if we get keener about being, and that's why I say inner researcher analyst, because as you know, being at Forrester, you couldn't write any old shit, right? If you said 30% of marketers think like this, you needed to prove that 30% of marketers think like that. And I think that's what we're going to need to do as B2B marketers, and that content will stand out, I think, if we can do that attribution. So, one reference was, everybody was talking about how the human attention span is less than a goldfish. You look for that reference, right? And it's been debunked. The BBC proved it wasn't true, right? But so many people say that shit. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So number one was understand your brand voice. Number 2, have an opinion. Number 3, have insight into your buyer problems. We were just talking about number 4, original research. I think this tees up to what you're thinking of is the best, which is last.
Absolutely. So the 5th, and this is a kind of like related to the last few as well, is case studies. I think that there is no way that your competitor, who is plugging in excellent prompts into ChatGPT or some other tool, is going to pop out a case study for how somebody uses your product, right? So, and the stats that they saw and the benefits they saw and the quotes that they'll come up with, right? And I think the case studies have always been the gold standard content marketing. It's always, and it's what everybody wants to read. Anybody wants to find out is, what was the true experience of working with you, And I don't mean the case study, which is blah, 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 had a problem and ta-da, we solved it, right? There's a journey that they went down. And I think that, it's thinking about case studies as those stories and obviously having the stats and the quotes and all that kind of stuff, but it's like a content package. It's got all of those things. And part of that is the story that's been told along the way. So I have saved the best to last. And I think this is the thing that makes a difference. And I think one analogy I would use, I read a lot of marketing books. The good ones are the ones that quote clients,
absolutely.
quote experience and work they've done, and other than just beyond their own opinion. And then the bad ones are the ones where they just opine. It's the same with anything you read on social media. People just have their opinions. They've never done it before. They don't know anything about it. They just have an opinion. This is the good stuff. So I think case studies is going to, that content is going to be incredibly valuable in the world of the machine.
Yeah, I totally agree, because it's like only you, probably the sales or account team, and the customer can pull that story together. Absolutely, and what do other customers and prospects want to know? They want to know how other people solve problems and solve them with you. So you and I have both been involved doing lots of case study, video, written, audio, etc. So I totally agree. This is the best and the last.
Yeah, and that also pulls at number 3, because I think that when you think about, if you understand your buyers' personas and needs, you know what needs to be in that case study, right? This isn't about you because I'm particularly proud of this feature or that function or this thing we do. It's how is it that we help somebody solve the needs of the audience that we know is that audience, right? And there's no generative AI is going to be able to do that for you.
And I've personally found that as I did case studies, that's how I got to understand both the buyer needs and how they articulate them. Which is almost as important as knowing what that challenge need was. Is, well, how did they talk about it? What were the words they used?
We should do an episode on case studies, mate, because I completely agree. It's an amazing research process as well, isn't it? You learn the language that somebody uses to express the problem. You learn how they describe your solution internally, and you learn the benefits and the needs. And often there's some surprises in there, right? And some of the things you think that they're going to love are things that don't really make a big difference in their life. It's other stuff that does, right? So I think that's really interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah, we should do case studies.
So your 5 strategies to help keep the robots where they should be in the closet, churning away, but you're doing all the smart stuff is 1, know your true brand voice. Number 2, have an opinion. And I imagine since you probably have multiple solutions, you might have multiple opinions. Number 3, have insight or understand the insight into your buyer's personas, problems, or their needs. Number 4, do original research. And last that we were just talking about is use case studies to tell the stories that your customers and prospects want to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's it, man. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I think those are when you proposed these 5, I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally on board with that. And so we come to the last element of our in our agenda. We did the weather, we did the 5. Now we do the song. What song do you want our listeners to transition to the next part of this episode on?
As you know, this is a tricky choice because there's a number of songs that are about this kind of stuff. And when I was growing up, there was a song called "Computer Love" by Zapp, which is a classic funk song about computer love. And then we found some great tunes, but it has to be, I think, "Heart on My Sleeve" by the AI Drake Weekend collaboration that happened, I think, earlier this year. Which sort of caused a bit of a stir in the news, and simply because it's AI generated, and it does sound very much like Drake and The Weeknd. It's apparently all completely AI generated. So I'll play out with a little bit of that, And I'll include, if you haven't heard that story, I'll include a link to that in the show.
And I imagine most Drake fans would say, yeah, it sounds like, but it's not the real thing.
No, but I'll play it out a little bit anyway.
Okay. Right, awesome. Thank you.
No worries. And will you be in the studio next week?
We should talk about that because next week is our Thanksgiving here in the States.
No, that's true. So you're going to take a week off for Thanksgiving?
And then come back on the following.
All right, mate. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I came in with my ex like Selena, the flex, bumping Justin Bieber, the fever ain't left, she know what she need, all I need, all she blessed, giving me my best, yeah, I got my heart on my sleeve with a knife in my back, what's with that, 21, I love him, then my brother, that's where it's at, Metro made the beat, so you know that it's gon' slap, yeah, it's gon' slap, time, run it back.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was Heart of My Sleep by AI, Drake and Weekend, which created a bit of a stir earlier in the year. And I'll include links to that whole story in the show notes. And speaking of AI, I've been playing around with how good or bad ChatGPT is at writing marketing content. You can check that out at mambypambyland.com, a bit of an experiment that I'm doing, which I'll also include a link to in the show notes. Right, it's that time of the week to wind down in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar to find out over a cocktail what's on the mind of my friend and content marketing guru Robert Rose, chief troublemaker at the Content Advisory. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend, and welcome to the bar. And oh my gosh, I see you're copying Las Vegas here, and doing Formula One. It's Formula One in the virtual bar. It's crazy that it looks like you've got a bigger crowd than Vegas did, which is fascinating. It's a low bar. Here we are. Formula One. It's loud, it's noisy, and it's the kind of thing that I would expect you to do, to repurpose the bar as you often do.
Well, absolutely, man. Well, if we're going all in Vegas, the Formula One, why wouldn't I invite them into the bar? Absolutely,
indeed.
And it's the right weekend.
Indeed.
Absolutely perfect. And
yes. We have a lovely, wonderful cocktail. This is a bit fancy for our Formula One celebration here on the weekend, and it's called a Bay Ridge. And it's this is sort of something you want to eat at a really fancy dinner or a really sort of cozy bar with big leather chairs and just exactly like we have here at the virtual bar. And it's basically a combination of rye whiskey. And rye is important here, so it's a rye whiskey, not some of the other whiskeys that you might get. And then a little dry vermouth, and then a little prune brandy and bitters. Now, prune brandy can be a little difficult to find, so you can use other kinds of brandy here if you want to, but a prune brandy is really what you're looking for here. It's kind of a Manhattan derivative, but it tastes different, obviously, for the different ingredients that we're talking about here. But you basically have a rye whiskey with dry vermouth, a little prune brandy, and a little bitters. And then you shake that up and chill it, obviously. And then basically you pour it into a martini glass, and you can garnish with a little bit of a lemon wedge or something like that. And away you go. It's a very, very fancy, very tasty cocktail, a great way to start an evening.
Well, I can tell you that Formula One can be fancy, but it's not like your IndyCar, your NASCAR fella. It is highbrow. Well, so I think we'll be all right. But prune brandy, I've never heard of. What's the brand that makes prune brandy? Is it like a specific kind of brandy that people might be out for?
It is. You can do it in a few. You can find it in a few. You just need to find it in a good liquor store. So you can also go with a plum brandy.
Okay.
There is a let's see here. I'm looking at a few different brands of. They all seem to be French, as it were.
Yes.
The fruit brandy. There is the prune brandy from Transylvania that I'm seeing here online. There is a La Vielle prune plum brandy. That looks lots of French brands.
French prune. Well, all right, we'll have to look out for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're sipping these Bay Ridges, and we're sipping them at the Formula One in Las Vegas. Is that true? Do I make that assumption?
Yes, is exactly right.
Yes.
That's where I was thinking we would go. Go check out the Formula One races and find some fancy seats and drink some fancy cocktails and watch really weirdly shaped cars go around a track.
I love it. All right, mate. And when there is the inevitable pause between practice sessions or whatever it is that they're up to, and the conversation turns to marketing, what are we talking about this week, mate?
Well, we could talk briefly about scripts. And this all sort of comes from, I saw a LinkedIn post about a week and a half ago, and it was really bad advice. Basically, the LinkedIn post said, you should never write a word-for-word script for any presentation you're going to do, or use a teleprompter for anything you're going to do in a video or other business presentation. And he said, great content performers just outline things, and then you let the language come naturally. Scripts make people sound stiff, he said, and basically that argued that any time you read the words, whether it's on a podcast or an audio file or a video, basically where you're not expected to have this thing memorized, then it's bad. And I don't think that's true at all, because I haven't found that to be true, and I use scripts all the time. Mm-hmm. What I do know, however, is that you need to do it well. It takes practice. And that's the real key here. And the key, and I'll just offer 3 quick best practices here, is to understand that script is a type of format, and it's a special kind of writing. And I learned that when I was growing up here in Hollywood, and I was trying to be a screenwriter. Yeah. And writing dialogue is very different than writing prose. Yep. And so the 3 things that I would just note, and then we certainly have a blog post that goes longer into this, is that 1, you don't think about grammar, right? Because this isn't going to be seen by external people, stop worrying about grammar, stop worrying about write like you speak. And even if you speak and then go back and transcribe it and edit it, that's better than sort of writing it as prose to try and keep that. And so that's the real key here, is to think about this. How you speak is how you want to write. And we do different things when we write like we speak rather than when we write. And an example I use in the post that I wrote was President Obama, who often would read from scripts and teleprompters. Yeah. But the key is, and I linked to this speech that he wrote where he said, "If I told you," right? So the way that we would write that if we were doing it for a publication is I would say, if I'd informed you that X bullet, 2 bullet, 3 bullet, 4 bullet, 5 bullet, right? And basically we'd list out the bullets, right? Yeah. But the way you write it in the script is, if I told you bullet number 1, or if I'd told you bullet number 2, or if I'd told you, well, you repeat it, right? The reason you repeat it is because it's a great part of the performance. And so when you bring your punchline for after you've listed your 3 or 4 bullets of if I told you, well, now it has a stronger punch from your verbal because you've built it up. You've built it up dramatically with the way that you speak, but you wouldn't have written it that way. Yeah. So that's the key. And I provide a couple of examples there, like the way I write my CMI news article every week, and where I put in my teleprompter, I put in the ums and the so and the ... and sort of where I want to pause, and I don't think about grammar. And the second thing is to think about the story within the story. What I mean by that is when you do a direct story, or what we call an active monologue, I'm trying to convince you of something, right? It's kind of like what I'm doing right here. Like I'm in active monologue mode right now. I'm speaking with the intention to tell you something and convince you of something. Now there's narrative monologue, which is if I went a couple of weeks ago, I want to tell you a story about John and the way John dealt with this. Now I'm going to move into a story. Now the key is knowing when and where to move in and out of the narrative dialogue versus the direct monologue, right? Because that can really build a powerful metaphor, or can build a powerful way to relay a point, but you don't want to do all of one all the time, or do none of any of them, right? You want to move them back and forth and balance them wonderfully well. And the last point that I'll make, the best practices, is that when you get all of that done and you write your script and you're going to read it off a teleprompter, you're going to read it off a piece of paper for your audio file or whatever, you're introducing somebody at a conference, tell it, don't read it. In other words, use the script as a means of helping you formulate the words, but you don't have to read it word for word.
Right.
You just want to use that script as a means of reminding it what it is you want to say and the way you want to say it. So you can read it, but then just tell it. Don't actually read the words, right? Because you can tell. You can tell when someone's reading something rather when they're telling something. Yeah. And that's the practice part. And I sort of finish with the sort of a bonus tip, which is practice, practice, practice. You can get really good at this, where you can get almost newscaster like that, at this. You just need to do it a lot. And it's a really effective way. And so I just want people to know that writing scripts can be a good thing for you.
Yeah, I like this. There's three things came to mind there. The first one was you'd need to learn to write the way that you speak, which I think might be an interesting exercise, because I've had the same thing where I've tried to transpose my Tuesday 2 cents and actually read it out in the podcast. I did that a couple of times, and you're exactly as you say, you're not going to write the way that you speak, so you need to adapt the script in order to sound like yourself. If that it sound like yourself when you're speaking, right, rather than yourself when you're writing. I think that's interesting. And then I was thinking, right. Then I'm thinking, it's that typical thing. You're repurposing content for the channel, right? So the content strategist in me is going, this is just standard, repurposing for the channel. And the third one is, I think that's the important one, is the practice. And I think that, I'm not a terribly good public speaker, because I think that I need to do that more. I need to script it better, and I need to practice more. And it tends to be that I'll get flung into an event on stage and I haven't had the time preparation. I'm reading from my bullet points and I'm doing all of that. And I think that my performance is part of me bumbling my way through this thing, and all I want to do is be vaguely entertaining. But I think that, I think that last point is the most important. And what are you going to practice if you don't write a script? Right?
Yeah. And then so the key here is that, when you have the time and the luxury to memorize something for a presentation or for your keynote or for your whatever it is, fantastic, lovely, memorize it and then say it the way you want to say it, right? Yeah. But most times you don't. Yeah. Like, you're not going to memorize the introduction to that super important executive that you're going to introduce at the conference. Yeah. You're not going to memorize that blog post that you need to present, or that presentation you need to present on Friday that you need to create on Tuesday. You're just not going to have the time. Yeah. So writing a script for it is a great way to make sure that you, are on time, because you can read it out loud and see exactly how long you're going to be. 2, make sure you get all the points out that you want to get out. You're not going to forget anything. Yeah. And 3, give you a bit of a help. Give you a bit of a help to tell exactly the story you want to tell. Yeah.
No, I've been guilty of all 3 of those things, particularly the coming off stage and going, damn it, I meant to mention the thing or the story.
That's right. I know. Oh, it's the worst.
And for some reason I skipped over the place I wanted to go to. I think that's really important. That's really important. So I know that we're a bit tight for time this week. You've got a hard stop. So let's get to my next segue, which is trying to figure out how to bring your website into the story that we've just heard. So where are people going to find something that is completely on channel, not scripted, but written very nicely?
That's right. Well, you'll find this blog post and many others just like it at our lovely little hovel on the web, which is contentadvisory.net.
Yes.
And of course, you can find us on our one-on-one coaching, and as well as expansions of my book, Content Marketing Strategy, at contentmarketingstrategy.com.
Splendid. And the book's going well, I hope?
The book is going well. The book is going very well, yes.
Good. And I'll include links to all those things in the show notes. But most of all, my friend, will you be in the bar next week?
I will indeed.
I look forward to it. I'll see you. Thank you, Robert, and you should check out his rose-coloured glasses column at the Content Marketing Institute blog, as back on the topic of AI that we were discussing at the beginning, they fed his voice into an AI engine, and you can get audio versions of his articles using this technology. It's quite good and a little bit weird, but it's worth checking out. So that's a wrap on episode 192 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. Thanks to Jeff and Robert for sharing their insight, and to you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track, and jiving along with us. You can find all of our links and the things we discussed in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, along with our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. And please let us know what you think, either via the socials or drop us a rating or review in your favourite podcast app, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. I know I promised Kathy McKnight this week, but client commitments means I'll be chatting with her next week as Jeff enjoys Thanksgiving with his family, and Robert will also be back in the bar. Until then, have a great week. If you're in the US, happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for listening. I hope you'll again join us next Saturday on Rockstar CMO FM.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.